Joe Biden's doctor, took the Fifth Amendment when he was asked about whether there was a conspiracy to cover up the mental and physical health of Joe Biden inside of the White House. Took the Fifth Amendment. Pretty, I thought, significant detail. And we talked about that last week. But some people said, well, he's a doctor. He's got the out of HIPAA. And I tried to distinguish between a patient diagnosis and a doctor being told, hey, no matter what your diagnosis is, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this guy is going to be okay, right? That would be a conspiracy, potentially. Now, Anthony Bernal, and I know Buck is disappointed in me, but I read all of Original Sin, and Anthony Bernal is a huge character in this book because he is basically Jill Biden's personal staffer who is in charge of messaging. And as you read the book, it's no great surprise that Dr. Jill Biden was among the most vociferous of Joe Biden's defenders and constantly saying that he was fine and there were no issues. And Anthony Bernal was sort of her eyes and ears inside of all top White House meetings, and he was often dictating policy. He just took the Fifth, too. They called him up to Capitol Hill. They asked him whether or not there had been a conspiracy to protect Joe Biden, and he also took the Fifth Amendment. Here is cut one. James Comer is hosting these hearings. Here is what was said about yet another top Biden official now taking the Fifth Amendment rather than answering questions.
Well, unfortunately, that was quick. This is the second witness that we've brought in via subpoena for a deposition that has pled the Fifth, and they've stated they're not going to answer questions. I want to read the first two questions, just so everyone knows. These are the types of questions we asked. Was Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president? He pled the Fifth. Second question, did any unelected official or family member execute the duties of the presidency? And this is Joe Biden's chief of staff.
Those are really very broad, easily, I would argue, avoided legal questions that he pled the Fifth for. Again, a second figure. Buck, here is my reading of the tea leaves here. I don't know this to be true. Let me be clear. I feel like there may be somebody who is singing like a canary inside of the Biden administration, because otherwise the logic behind these guys taking the Fifth doesn't add up. He could just say no. There was no conspiracy. I thought Joe Biden was perfectly fine to be president of the United States. Those are his opinions. The fact that he's not wading into it at all, after the presidential physician did not weigh in at all, makes me wonder, where are these guys thinking there is legal peril? What are they afraid of? Because the history, as all of you know, has been basically anybody in power can do anything they want except for Trump, and there's never charges brought.
Something to keep in mind is that the precedent has been very clearly set. They sent Bannon to prison. They sent Navarro to prison. You know, over an executive privilege claim that I think was entirely valid, and yet they sent them to. They actually made senior presidential advisors go to prison. So, you know, Clay, on the one hand, it's deeply suspicious. Even though I know it's so funny, whether you like someone or not is what determines whether you like or whether you defend their use of the Fifth Amendment as just the process or suspicious, right? It's like, what is it? I think John Hamm in not The Departed, The Town. You know, the movie with Ben Affleck about the bank robbers.
Yes,
he plays an FBI guy, and he's like, look, people who lawyer up are guilty. That's what he says. And you know, if you're the FBI guy, you maybe think that. I think that on this issue, they recognize that the Trump administration and Congress specifically in this case will make examples out of people who lie. And they don't know what other people are going to say about what they knew and when they knew it. So the smart, if Clay, let's take it to this level. If you were their lawyer, if you were their consigliere on this one for a senior Biden aide, wouldn't you say no benefit in testifying, plead the Fifth?
Maybe. But this is why I think they know more than we do publicly.
Well, why the maybe, though, right? Like, what possible upside for them could there be other than causing legal jeopardy for themselves? They already look horrible because Biden had dementia, and we all knew that they hid it, and they all knew, right? So there's the reputational damage, I think, is already done.
I would actually, if I thought I had done nothing wrong, I would actually want to sit down and go under oath and tell you that all of the attacks are wrong.
But you know what would happen? They would ask them, they would sit them down, like this Bernal guy, they would sit him down, and they would say, you really didn't know that there was a problem here, buddy? You didn't see him?
I get it, but he can just say no. I think the story here
I think
is
he
not
would look
the
preposterous
testimony.
if he said no, though, is the problem. Like, he would look like a total clown and a joker if he actually tried that now. You don't think so?
Maybe, but I think the story here is, from a legal perspective, I think they're afraid somebody's flipped. And that is the legal peril. Because if everybody just says, hey, all hands in the center of the ring, we're all going to say Biden was fit as a fiddle, and we're just going to ride or die on this forever. If everybody agrees to lie and or give their impression that there was nothing wrong with him, then the charade can continue. But as soon as one guy or gal says, hey, we had a meeting, and somebody came in and said, hey, here is the reality. We are going to say that Biden is fit as a fiddle, even though we know that to not be true. And we've got the doctor who's going to say every time, hey, I did a full examination of him, everything's good. If one guy or gal comes out and says that, just think about this, Buck. Think about the lunatic people on the Jan 6th investigations. They put Cassie Hutchinson under oath. I think that was her name, Cassidy, maybe. And
Cassidy,
she said,
yes.
She said Trump tried to strangle the driver of the beast. I mean, remember, they had her under oath saying that as hearsay that she supposedly had been told from somebody else. And the media all ran and covered it like it was the gospel truth. And Trump, to his credit, came out and said, have you seen the guys that are actually in charge of protecting me? If I could strangle one, they would knock me back with, one flip of the wrist. But they were able to flip some people to get them to say something negative. So far, that hasn't happened inside of the Biden inner circle. I'm just saying the Fifth Amendment suggests to me that there is some concern about legal peril. I don't think it's related to how are you going to look publicly. I think it's that they maybe have somebody who is going to testify to the opposite of you, and you could be in trouble if you get caught athwart that testimony.
Well, of course, you plead the Fifth because of the possibility of legal peril, right? You avoid self-incrimination. So yeah, that's a given. I think the question is why wouldn't, why would, for them, from their perspective, there's nothing.
Let me ask you this.
There's no upside from them testifying about this because they're going to look like liars and clowns no matter what, even if they're not prosecuted. That's my contention.
I can see that argument. Did Fauci ever take the Fifth on anything?
No, but
I don't think that he did.
Fauci was very good at, there were like a lot of data to look at, and then we thought the consensus. And as a result, though, I think there are some people out there that would still say Anthony Fauci is honest and truth-coming. Just renewed his call for Fauci to face DOJ prosecution. I think that was like a couple days ago. Yeah, I think that's right. But I give credit. I don't know that I've ever given credit to Fauci ever before. He didn't take that Fifth Amendment out, and he argued that he had done nothing wrong. I'm surprised the Biden team is not continuing to go down with SS Biden and saying, hey, because now it's on the historical record, you've already, the die is cast. You were engaged in a cover-up. You might as well lie and say he didn't have any cognitive decline all the way down. Now, we've got another cut here, and I think Trump is right about this. And Trump said, hey, this autopen thing, which we have talked about some, is a big deal. The New York Times dropped this story on Sunday, and a lot of people have ignored it, but I do think it is a big story. And listen to him saying, hey, this is the story that should be getting a lot of attention, not Epstein, which is what he said just a few minutes ago. Listen to this.
He doesn't have a policy. Some lunatic around the desk had a policy. Whoever operated the autopen had a policy, which is, by the way, I think the biggest scandal That's the scandal they should be talking about, not Jeffrey Epstein. The scandal you should be talking about is the autopen, because I think it's the biggest scandal, one of them in American history.
This is, again, for those of you who didn't read this stuff, Biden did his first interview with the New York Times in 5 years. My alarm bells go off when I see Biden doing an interview with anybody that they feel like they're in peril. If you go read what he said to try to defend himself and during the autopen thing, basically he had no idea who they were pardoning. And I think this goes to the larger context, which Comer is investigating right now, which is, hey, who was actually president of the United States and who was executing the authority? Think about how bad Biden is, that they wouldn't even let him just sign stuff, right? This guy they didn't trust to such an extent that they were using auto pens on incredibly significant stuff. And I think we had an audio clip of Trump saying, yeah, look, the auto pen in general is used, but it's usually used when it's like, hey, a 7-year-old wrote in and you want to send him back a letter and acknowledge that the 7-year-old was there. This is how it's usually used, not for super significant things like pardons. Trump has these signing ceremonies where he makes sure everybody sees him sign significant stuff. I'm not saying he can't ever use an auto pen, but it shouldn't be for the presidential pardons.
We use this term, the apparatus, for the Democrats so many times, and it seems that the apparatus was doing the pardons. The collective, the top of the hive mind inside the White House, because it wasn't Biden's mind. And this is, once again, for anybody who says it's not important or we should move on from that story, from the Biden story, I just point out, if nothing else, the American people should have a full accounting of how dishonest the Democrats were in all respects about Biden and how they're willing to trample on the rule of law and the Constitution itself in the wielding of executive power. And they should keep that in mind when the Democrats are saying, oh, put us in charge. We'll be better on health care or something in the midterms. This stuff matters. It does matter. Their record matters. Because we also talk about how Trump is doing phenomenal in the economy and the border and crime is going down and all these great things. People need to be reminded, because the greatest asset the Democrats have is the public ignorance of how they actually govern. That's the biggest thing that helps Democrats. So we don't want to let that be an asset for them so they can take power again and the apparatus can be in charge once again. As we saw from around Biden, it was disastrous. There's another way you should stay in touch with your kids this summer that doesn't involve cell phones, and it's so easy, and it's actually a lot of fun. Get a pair of Rapid radios. Your kids will love them because they're like walkie-talkies, fun, easy to use, and they're super convenient. No setup is required. Just pull them out of the box, press a button, and talk. It's a one-touch connection, perfect for busy families. Rapid radios operate on a nationwide LTE network, meaning they can connect with anyone who has access across the U.S., also carrying a Rapid radio. Rapid radios combine the simplicity of walkie-talkies with today's technology for peace of mind. We've got them ourselves and know how easy they are to use. Go to rapidradios.com, save up to 60%, get free UPS shipping from Michigan, and use code RADIO for an extra 5% off. That's code RADIO. Go to rapidradios.com, use code RADIO, and you get 65% off total.